Okay, so welcome everyone to the June meeting of the Forest Business Alliance Peer Learning Network. Excited to be here today with a special presentation by Shoana Humphries, and I'll introduce her in just a moment. And as per usual, what we'd like to do is kind of go around the room, start with introductions. This is the bulk of our time today will be with Shona's presentation, and then opportunity for a Q&A with her after that. And then, so in the introductions, what we'd also like to invite for folks to do, and especially those who are, in the field and part of the FBA, is to give any sort of project updates about what you're working on or what might be relevant in the field right now. This is helpful for Shoana to get a sense of who the audience is and where you're working and what you're working on currently. So please feel free to kind of elaborate on some of that in your introductions. And then we'll go into our presentation, and then we'll have the time for Q&A, and that'll be our meeting for this month. And then yeah, we're still working on a topic and feature for next month in July, and we'll send out notification about that probably next week. And then we'll be taking August off just as a little time for vacation for everyone. So with that, Jim, do you have anything else to add before we dive in?
No, that sounds good. It's a good introduction.
Okay. So let's just go around the room and provide some introductions for everyone. I'm Kathleen Dowd. I'm part of the Forest Business Alliance core team for the Peer Learning Network based in Washington State. And I kind of coordinate the online meeting facilitation and support for the networks and webinars in this way. So let's just go, Jim, do you want to start? And then we'll just go around from there.
Sure. I'm Jim Adriance. I'm also with the Forest Business Alliance, working with groups that are applying to the CAL FIRE grant fund that we're supporting, and also helping with this peer learning network. We just had an in-person meeting in California, which I was part of, and so I've been with the program about a year. And I also worked a lot in Latin America, Shoana, with Inter-American Foundation and Peace School. So it's
Cool.
good to find a another global citizen.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that sometime. Great.
Thanks, Jim. Who'd like to go? We'll just kind of hop on and say hello and introduce yourselves.
Hi, my name is Mika Cook. I am here in Humboldt County on the North Coast, and I am wearing a lot of hats and trying really hard to figure out where I am going. Seriously considering going back to school and getting a degree studying the economic value of different forest treatments on a grant for the Forest Service, but I've been here mostly in the capacity during my grant funded by the NCRP Woody Feedstock Aggregation Pilot, exploring the feasibility of a cooperative entity type for doing that work, and realizing that it's kind of the chicken before the egg, because we also have to figure out how the work is going to be done in any regular fashion and how much material is going to be coming into the facility. And there's a lot of moving parts, and currently feeling a little bit frazzled about where to put my energy.
Got it.
Thanks for that, Mika. Yeah.
I can jump in. Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Thompson. I'm, the Executive Director of Yuba Watershed Protection and Fire Safe Council. We are, we're the fiscal sponsor for the Yuba pilot piece of the Forest Business Alliance. So Carrie invited me today to come check it out. Yeah, I haven't been involved in the peer learning network here before, so excited to just kind of see and hear what's going on and see where we might be able to fit in even. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome.
I can hop in quickly. Tom Maseko, based out of Chicago. I'm an independent consultant, spent my career in the world of finance, private equity, private investing, am pretty much retired right now, and looking to leverage my skill set to help small businesses, folks focused on making the world a better place rather than just trying to make money. And trying to help leverage, again, the finance and accounting and business planning expertise that I've developed to help folks that are out there trying to make a difference. So trying to pitch in wherever I can to help out this group and others that are out there.
Thank you, Tom.
Can jump in. I'm Carrie Binney, and I'm part of the Forest Business Alliance team, and focus mostly on the technical assistance with grant writing, but also help to manage the project and wear other multiple hats as a consultant on other projects for other things. But I'm really looking forward to hearing more about the Green Value Tool. Heard a little bit so far, but excited to see how it could help some of the folks that we're working with both here and also with Allison and Yuba.
Thank you, Carrie. And if other folks come on in the beginning, or we can do it at the end as well, we'll have them also introduce themselves at that time. And for the recording, I'll do a brief introduction, Shoana, and then we can invite you to share any other relevant information you'd like to about yourself before we begin, or before you begin your presentation. But I'll say right now that Dr. Shoana Humphries is a consultant in California with over 20 years experience in tropical community forestry and forest certification. And she's going to talk about the Green Value Tool for simplified financial analysis of forest-based initiatives. And this has been used for over 10 years to generate financial decision-making information for and strengthen the financial viability of community and family forest enterprises in Latin America, with many potential applications in the US. So we're really glad to have her here. Thank you so much for coming, especially this week. And I will turn it over to you. And I'll offer to, if folks have questions that come up and you want to either remember them, you're welcome to pop them in the chat, and I will kind of field that as we go along. But we'll probably save questions till the end. We can just monitor them then, or you're welcome to kind of wait until the end, and we will have that Q&A time with Shoana at the end. So go ahead and show, yep, there you go, perfect. And show, yeah, perfect, and you unmuted. Okay, great.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Kathleen and Tom, and I know Vance is not with us right now, but thank you so much for this opportunity, and to Carrie and Allison for making the initial connection with FBA. I really appreciate this opportunity to share with you all the Green Value Tool for simplified financial analysis. And I'm happy to share this presentation too with you all when we're finished. See if I can get it. There we go. Okay, so you heard a bit of background about me. I have been focused on small scale forestry, forest enterprises, and forest certification, mostly in Latin America. But I started off my career looking at forest certification standards back in the late 90s for the Southeast US, and spent 3 years looking at every aspect of sustainable forestry in that region. And I also for a while worked with Forest Stewardship Council, or FSC International, in their headquarters in Bonn, Germany for 3 years, looking at social certification policy and programs globally. But other than that, most of my experience has been in Latin America, but I am eager, as we were talking about before the recording started, to find opportunities to share my experience and knowledge and tools with folks in the US. So I hope this meeting can lead to some new opportunities for collaboration to that end. So I have a small consulting firm based in Berkeley, California, out of my home. It's mostly me, but when needed, I subcontract with others to provide a variety of services to support and strengthen family and community-based initiatives, including capacity building, research, planning and implementation, and publications, such as reports, handbooks and tools, such as the Green Value Tool and others I've worked on, and scientific articles. And a list of publications with links is available on my website there. So in terms of general context in which this tool was developed and in which I've been working, I'm sure none of this is new to you, but to kind of set the stage, financial viability is a critical pillar of sustainable forest management and successful forest products and services enterprises. But few landowners, foresters, or entrepreneurs utilize financial monitoring and analysis tools to help them make decisions, for example, to track indicators such as cost per unit sold or rate of return, or to analyze scenarios. And rarely are the impacts of policies and regulations or grants and investments related to forest businesses quantified in terms of cost, income, business viability, job creation, or other financial or social impacts. And the general feeling is that it can be really daunting to collect and analyze financial information. So it's understandable that this does not happen. And this situation is common not only in the US with our small businesses, but globally. So I became really interested in this topic for my PhD work. I was looking at what was happening in Brazil with community forestry in the Amazon region in the mid-2000s. And at that time, there was a lot of investment in community forestry regarding community organization, like setting up associations, formalizing them, setting up cooperatives, and looking at technical forest management issues, such as how to plan and implement sustainable forest management and tree harvesting. But there was relatively little investment regarding financial management and enterprise development. It was usually about the time that communities started selling products that the project support would stop and they would be kind of left on their own. So from 2006 to 2008, I, in collaboration with Dr. Thomas Holmes of the US Forest Service, decided to investigate the financial viability and socioeconomic impacts of pilot community forestry enterprises in the Amazon region of Brazil. So at this time, several pilots that had been receiving subsidies for 3 to 5 years were in a situation where they were going to have to operate only off the income that they generated from the sale of timber. It was mostly timber because the subsidies were going to be ending. So we wanted to see, through a participatory method of sitting down and looking with folks at all of their costs and income information, would they be viable in a typical year? We looked at a typical year of operation. So there's a lot of interest in the results. We presented them to the Brazilian Forest Service as well as the US Forest Service. And there was a lot of interest in our methodology, the participatory way in which we collected and analyzed this information. And so we decided to turn that research method into what is now the Green Value Tool. And since 2013, I've been working through initially a nonprofit organization in San Francisco for 5 years, and since then as an independent consultant to train folks. We have over 400 people now that I've been directly involved in training through virtual, in-person, and hybrid events in 7 Latin American countries. I also did a training in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And others have used the tool, including in other Latin American countries, in Africa, and in Asia. So what is the tool? It is a tool to guide users through a simplified financial analysis of annual costs and income using 6 steps. Starts with planning, so identifying what is our unit of analysis, who's the producer, type of producer, what is the product or service that they're selling, what are the main productive activities involved, and as well as administrative activities, and what are their goals for the year in financial terms. So do they want to make a certain amount of money or have a certain rate of return or get costs or income up or down by a certain percentage? And then we have the following steps that guide users through collecting and entering the information, and then analyzing it in step 5. In step 5, we have a worksheet, and I'll share what that worksheet looks like with you all in a moment, that automatically analyzes all of the information that's been entered and provides information for several financial indicators, including average cost, net income, and rate of return. There are also 6 graphics or graphs that are automatically generated to help people understand and share the results, as well as a sensitivity analysis page, which helps users go through and look at what would happen if, for example, costs go up or down, or prices received go up or down. So the tool is designed for forest-based initiatives, including, this is a general term that we use, which includes small to medium scale forest owners, such as families, communities, tribes, land trusts, and municipalities, small to medium scale forest products and services enterprises, cooperatives, and other private businesses, such as consultants and contractors that want to look at their viability. And it can be used at different points in value chains. So it can be used for the generation or harvest and production of raw materials, or at other points in the value chain where value is being added. The actual users of the tool can include forest owners or farmers, enterprise administrators, collaborators, such as folks from companies, nonprofit partners, government agencies, or extensionists, service providers, again, such as consultants or contractors, and researchers. So in terms of how the tool is used, we have these worksheets for each step that are used to organize financial information by cost and by income. And for costs, we first organize costs by around 3 to 5 main productive activities, and then also administrative activities. And then we further organize costs by 3 main inputs. These include labor, materials and services, and machinery and equipment. And again, I'll show an example of how we organize costs in these ways. And then a very important point is that we encourage full cost accounting, especially we saw with these enterprises that receive a lot of subsidies, such as free technical assistance, cash sometimes, grants, free equipment, that they're not taking into account the full cost of production. And so we encourage them to include the cost of all of their inputs, whether they're currently subsidized or not, so that they know what the true cost is, and will be planning to be able to cover those costs if those subsidies are no longer available. And then for income, we include income from sales, as well as other sources of income, such as grants or environmental service payments that don't have anything to do with the product or service being sold, but that provide income that's useful to the product or service being analyzed. Okay, so the options for analysis include looking at just one product or service, for example, logs from a forest or boards from a sawmill. Or we have another set of worksheets where you can look at up to 3 different products and services, such as logs, carbon credits, and ecotourism, and analyze each of those separately, and then also as a system. And often we find that one product is subsidizing another. One might not be profitable in the moment, but the others that are help cover that. And then we have a new set of worksheets that enable the analysis of 3 related products. So we could have a raw material and 2 derivatives. And so, for example, we could look at logs, boards, and flooring, and look at those each separately, as well as kind of the enterprise as a whole. And then we also have the option of using a net present value worksheet we developed to analyze results for multiple productive periods. And I have the slides that I'm going to present to you all in this presentation, but at the end, I have 2 examples that I'm not going to present, but one of those examples is a silvopastoral system, where a colleague at the U.S. Forest Service used the tool to analyze calves in a pine plantation as a silvopastoral system. So you can look at the analysis of that, which includes the use of the net present value tool worksheet. So in terms of when is a good time to use the tool, anytime really. And here I provide some examples. It can be used in the beginning to analyze potential management or business plans and changes to existing plans or systems. It can be used continuously. So for example, in year 1, you could establish baseline information, and then in following years, compare the information from a current year to the year before. And this can allow or help facilitate identifying problems and opportunities. So what are financial challenges, and what are opportunities for improving the situation? We can also identify socioeconomic benefits. So what are the wages that are being generated by these enterprises year after year? And what are the funds to local businesses, which is usually the purchase of materials and services from local businesses. And then it can analyze scenarios for future growth. It can also be used before and after specific interventions. So if there's going to be a training or the introduction of a new product, for example, for an enterprise, you could do the analysis before that intervention as well as after, to help identify impacts on the financial viability of the enterprise. For example, the cost per unit sold, the profit or rate of return, and also identifying changes in socioeconomic impacts due to that intervention. And or it can be used as needed. So for example, if there's a change coming up or plan to an existing policy or program that affects rural enterprises, small forest-based enterprises, you could look at what is the current situation with these enterprises by analyzing a diversity of models and then using that information as input for the revision or development of new policies or programs. So I wanted to show some or provide some examples of the types of products that we've and services that we've looked at, because in each of our workshops, we, which are usually multiple day in the term, and for I want to speak in Spanish for in-person ones, presencial, we look at over 3 days, 3 different products or services and analyze them during the workshop as a way to learn how to use the tool. So these are some examples of the ones that we've looked at. We've originally designed the tool and applied it to many different types of timber products. And so we've looked at things like selling standing trees, selling logs, lumber, and finished products. And I will provide an example of a sawmill coming up. But we've also used it for a diversity of non-timber forest products and different types of services. So we've looked at restoration activities, seedlings that have been grown in greenhouses, ecosystem services such as carbon credits, the silvopastoral system that I mentioned, tourism, freshwater fishery, bamboo in many forms, tree nuts, leaves, and oils, and agricultural crops and artisan crafts. So this is not everything we've looked at, but it shows you the diversity of types of products and services that we've used the tool with. So this is an example from a sawmill, a community-owned sawmill in southern Mexico that we analyzed last year. Carrie had said that a lot of you guys are kind of focused on in the Alliance these sawmills, so I wanted to share an example I thought would be most useful to you all. So I've converted the pesos to dollars, and this is a snapshot of part of the summary worksheet from step 5, where all the data that was entered in other worksheets is brought over and used to populate these tables using links. Everything is open and you can press a cell in any of these worksheets and see where the information is coming from or what the formula is that's been used. So in the first table, which is the cost per activity and input type, sorry, let me back up and say it to give you an idea of the scale of this operation. It is a community sawmill, and they processed and sold 268,626 board feet of lumber in the year that we looked at. And it was tropical, mostly hardwood species. So in the first column, we have the main productive activities, log yard management, which included the purchase of the logs, milling, air drying, maintenance of the sawmill, blade sharpening were the main productive activities. And then we always have a line for administrative costs. And then in the following columns, we have our 3 main input types: labor, materials and services, and machinery and equipment. And machinery and equipment represents the annual depreciation cost. And we have a way where we walk users through calculating the depreciation cost using a method that is pretty straightforward and actually employs a useful life specific to each operation. We ask folks how long any piece of machinery or equipment usually lasts for them, and we use that as a useful life. And then we have in the following column, the subtotal cost per activity, the percentage that cost represents for that activity over the total cost, and then the average cost per unit sold per activity. So then looking down at the bottom, we have the subtotal costs per input type and our total average cost per unit sold. So, and in the following table, we have the income, profit, and rate of return. And the first column, we have these financial indicators of total income, total cost, net income or profit, and rate of return. So I wanted to point out a few things here. We can see, looking at this, that 77% of our cost is accounted for in the log yard management. And that includes mostly the purchase of the logs that are going to be milled. So that is the reason that cost is so high. You can see it under the materials and services, and that $286,000, almost $287,000. Most of that is the purchase of the logs. And but yeah, and then looking down, we can see that the input that was the highest cost was materials and services for the same reason. But really, for all of these activities, we can look and see, where are we spending the most on labor? Where are we spending the most on materials and services? What can we do to make these costs, to reduce them, to be more efficient as an enterprise? But it really breaks it down in a way that can be helpful for identifying issues, ways to reduce costs. We can also see in red there are total cost. And then in the table below, we can see our profit or net income and rate of return. And no one that I've worked with has ever said, we knew all this, we had this. They often are saying, yeah, that's about what we calculated our cost to be. Usually they're not. Oftentimes, family enterprises are not including the value of their labor, which is an issue. You're subsidizing your consumer, basically, when you're not including the value of the cost of your labor. And often they are not taking into consideration, as you can see here in green, this value, depreciation value of the machinery and equipment. This is how much they need to be saving to be able to replace these items when they no longer function. And for enterprises, especially that have received a lot of upfront costs and maybe free machinery and equipment, they're really not taking this into account when they're looking at their total cost. Or their average cost per unit sold, which is an indicator of what their minimum price needs to be to cover all of this, the value of all of these inputs. This is an example of one of the 6 graphs that's generated automatically to help people kind of who are more visual understand really how these costs are distributed by activity. And then as a researcher, I am very interested in looking at, especially for, in rural communities where you don't have a lot of sources of employment or income, what is the value of wages that are going to folks? And so we can see that this is a benefit, to local community. Labor is an important cost for enterprises, but it's also an important socioeconomic benefit. And then the purchase of materials and services is often done locally. And of course that depends on the business, but I've often found that to be the case. This also represents a positive socioeconomic impact for local businesses. And financial viability, some folks are really caught up in what's our rate of return, and others don't really care. But this can be an interesting metric by which to look at how an enterprise is evolving. Are they able to get their costs down or their income up over time? And it can be an important indicator for collaborators, donors, potential investors, and governments that are supporting these enterprises through programs. So in thinking about how could we use the Green Value Tool to support forest businesses or enterprises here in the US and on the West Coast, these are some of my ideas. I'm very interested in hearing yours, of course. But in terms of potential uses, capacity building is an obvious one. Capacity building and financial management, management, monitoring, and analysis. So we can look at forest products and services enterprises and train them in how to do the financial monitoring and analysis, as well as collaborators and partners, look at training them as trainers. We can also use the tool if there are folks interested in doing this with a diversity of cases and compile panel data. So look at results over time for different types of enterprises, look at their viability, their financial impacts, and their financial risks. We could, for specific enterprises, look at business as usual scenarios versus scenarios where innovations are introduced, look at how do the costs and benefits of value addition affect an enterprise. So if we introduce a new product or new machinery, how does that affect their viability? Or looking at new products. So if an enterprise were to introduce new products, again, how does that change their situation? We could look at income generation for different enterprises or different models. We could quantify those wages, received, look at the relative impact of one enterprise versus another in terms of income generation, and identify ways to increase net returns. And if there's any interest in cooperatives, I know Mika mentioned that, we can look at, we've often done that, looked at individual producers that are members of cooperatives and looked at their costs and income, and then looked at, as a cooperative, what are their costs of operation and their income. And you can look at, what is the cooperative paying the producer? You know, is that really a price that covers their costs or not? But just kind of add some transparency to all of that. And we can look at strategies for financial viability for cooperatives. And then in terms of research and publications, these could include case studies or policy briefs. We can look at how do enterprise models vary, inform viability challenges, and what have been some lessons learned. How do enterprise viability and income change over time? And then how do current policies and programs affect the financial viability of forest enterprises? So these are just some ideas, and the tool is available for free to download from our website. It is available in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. And in addition to the tool, you can download the versions for one product or several products. And then we have a Green Value Tool Facilitators Kit, which has a lot of the presentations that I use in training events, as well as some posters that we use. I have several peer-reviewed publications on the website that involve the Green Value Tool, as well as others that I've been involved in related to family forestry, small-scale forestry. We have case studies that we've written up about the use of the tool with different producers. And then we have worksheets with example data. So if you download the worksheets, but you don't have any data you want to put in there right now, but you want to see how the sheets are linked together, you can look at, we have 3 different ones in English. I think a timber example, bamboo, and I can't remember the third one, maybe Brazil nuts or something like that. But you can look at the data for different types of products. So that's all I have. And again, I'll share this presentation, which has 2 more examples that we analyzed, a case of a timber cooperative in Brazil selling logs, and then the silvopastoral system in the Southeast US. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Shoana. Yeah, thank you. And you're welcome to keep sharing the screen in case people's questions, if you want to refer back to a previous slide, that's fine.
Great.
So yeah, thank you so much. Let me open it up to questions. I know we had a couple people had to drop off, and we've had a couple people join, so they'll be catching up to speed. But go ahead, let me just go ahead and open it up to questions right now, and we'll go from there. And you're welcome to unmute yourselves or place them in the chat, but probably easier to just unmute yourselves. Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the questions I had was, as we've talked to different folks, kind of thinking about the future and thinking about projecting their business is something that comes up. Is that anything you've ever contemplated, or a capability that is part of the tool as they think about what's going to happen down the road?
Yeah, well, so for example, I've been working with several pilot community forestry enterprises in Colombia, and it's tough. You have a lot of illegality, so prices for lumber are most enterprises are selling rough sawn blocks of wood right now. It's really expensive to get the wood out of the forest, and then they are competing with folks who are not doing things legally and formally. So we were able to show that they were actually like negative couple percentage, so in terms of rate of return, selling blocks. But we analyzed the next year a case of them paying for equipment to do some primary processing into boards, and we were able to show that their profitability went up to like 13%. So it was a case for both showing the government how important it is to invest in this type of capacity. I mean, roads, to be able to get the stuff out, infrastructure for electricity, all of these things, and to reduce the taxes that they were charging these enterprises, which were pushing some or preventing some from being feasible. But yeah, that was one. I mean, we weren't looking really long term. We were just looking at what could they do in the relative short term to become viable. We don't do a whole lot. We did develop this net present value worksheet to be able for folks who wanted to project out. Usually we've used the tool in natural forest settings where the activities and therefore kind of the costs are pretty similar each year. So by analyzing any given year, we have an idea of what their costs and income are going to be and what their main challenges are going to be, or areas where they need to really try to be more efficient or get costs down or get more assistance. We haven't done a lot of long-term ones, but we do have this plantation. We have a couple of plantation examples. One we have written up in a case study for carbon credits, and then another one, the silvipastoral system that's shared in this presentation.
Yeah.
I'm very curious what you think, Tom, I don't have a background in finance, or I'm not even an economist. I'm just someone who was curious about this and thought, if I can do this, anybody can do this.
I'm amazed that that you could get a tool that is functional. There's so many variables out there. I can't imagine where you even started with this. So that's my initial reaction. And to see it actually out there and being used, because I was asked in a presentation I did a couple weeks ago, can you give us a template? I said no. Everything's too unique.
Wow.
So the fact that you've that was my professional opinion. The fact that you've been able to put something together that's functional, that's useful for folks is really impressive.
Thank you. Thanks. And especially in publishing these results, we emphasize how important it is to use the same methodology when you're trying to compare enterprises, because what we find is, depending on the author, they include some costs, they exclude others. And so, I think it's really useful for all kinds of folks, especially researchers and those looking, to have something ready to go that they can apply.
Yeah, and the
That's great.
consistency of the data is extremely important. I did some work with Vance, who's not on the call, a couple of years ago, thinking about what are the major hurdles to financing projects, and financing environmentally sound projects. And the number one thing that came back from all the experts was the data is not consistent. There's not a way to evaluate project A versus project B versus project C in a consistent manner. So that rings true.
Well, and we really emphasize to folks that the value, the quality of the outputs will depend completely on the quality of the inputs. So, and it does take some time really getting to know the tool and really reading the instructions, which nobody ever wants to do. But, to make sure, there's no way to guarantee that people are going to enter all the information they should, but at least it's a step in that direction.
I had a question for you. Well, I kind of have a big speech and then a question. No.
Okay, great.
Well, I think so. The world we're working in, so the Forest Business Alliance, we support groups that want to apply for funding with the CAL FIRE grant fund for wood products and bioenergy.
Okay.
And this peer learning network, we're a place where what I'm finding, I guess one question is, who's our audience, right? Like, who would you serve with this tool? And I think, and this is where I'm really curious about Tom's experience too. We talk about startups and small businesses. People love them, and they do start new things. And then, if 10 small businesses start up with new things, one of them survives, and then that's the one that turns into a medium size and people want to fund. It's the small businesses are really in the toughest position, I think. But yet they're the innovators and trying new things. And I think I look at this tool, and what I've noticed as I've met the small businesses we work for, let's say there's small, medium, large businesses that the CAL FIRE grant fund supports. And I think this tool will be more useful out of the box for medium and large scale businesses, because of what you all are talking about, the data requirements, collecting the data. What I find with small businesses, they don't have any bandwidth really to, collecting data, financial data, they can do that, but analyzing it and making reports, that's really the world of funded projects, right? With grants or government agencies, there's this other world of people that want to analyze and that can get the data, that can pay for data, but I don't find the small businesses really having the bandwidth to do that. So I think in order to apply this tool to small businesses, I think it would really help to have someone paid for that could go help small businesses gather the data and walk people through and help collect it. That's probably not the case for medium-sized businesses. They would have the bandwidth, maybe if you talk to their accounting departments and they have a field staff that could actually collect data. So anyway, so I think as you think about applying the tool, it would need more modifications or more thinking about how would we help small businesses really do this analysis, which is critical, right? And all of the investors in the small businesses want to know this information. I mean, I don't know, Tom, in your experience, is it that simple that it's small, medium, and large businesses have very different capabilities of looking at this type of information, being analytical and keeping track of costs and analyzing potential investments and comparing business as usual with innovation. I don't know. I find our peer learning network is tilting towards smaller businesses, and they are facing different problems than slightly larger enterprises. So I was kind of a speech. Sorry about that, but I think, but the data collection. I've been an economist, and data collection is always such a important thing. But it's who's paying for it, right? And who's going to pay for the analysis of it, and really small businesses on it. They're strapped, right? They just don't have the capacity to gather and analyze. Right.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And what we often end up doing is we have a whole page dedicated to assumptions. And, often people, especially when you're running a small business, you're not keeping track of your time. And so, they know how much they're paying other people, right? Because they have their, the salaries that they're paying out or wages that they're paying out. But they're not keeping track of their own time. And so that, which is an important administrative cost, usually, if not involved in the production itself, at least in the administration of the enterprise. So we have people sit down and write out, how long does it usually take you to do this? How long do you usually, if you're going to the Capitol to go get a permit approved or something, how long does that usually take? And so we have them estimate different things that they're not writing things down for. And again, it's very rare that these small businesses are keeping track of their own labor even for productive activities. So it's a challenge that we face in almost every analysis we do and we're mostly working with family and small enterprises in Latin America right now. So for those who are not monitoring, some do, but for those who aren't, even just sitting down over a few days, once a year, and looking at all of and they've got receipts from all their purchases of different things that can be entered at that point. So even if they do it once a year, I think it can be really helpful to look at their model. And if they need help, being walked through that process, folks like me or those we train, I would think could be available to do that ideally. But yeah, Tom, if you wanted to respond to that too, I'd be interested.
I guess to the question of, do you find small businesses having this capability? I would say no, which is why the tool is helpful. Just to your points, Jim, a couple of the questions I had was, does this run independently or is there an outside consultant to help? Which gets to your point, Jim, who's actually doing it? And then the other question I had jotted down was, did users even know what, quote, good looks like? So is 19% a good return? Is 5% a good return? Is anything above zero on net income enough? So I had questions about that. Is great to have the data, who's analyzing it, who's using that information to then drive decision making. But I think just the fact that you have a tool here to gather the information and to have the data available so that either they could or somebody else could help them analyze. I mean, that's the key, is getting that data. The first step is getting that data. And then anyway, just the other random thought I had about applying this in the US and especially for the Cal Fire is, could the outputs from this tool match up with the information that the recipients need to produce every year to report? Or is this an additional burden on top of what they're already doing to provide the information to CAL FIRE? So it'd be really, it'd be wonderful if they're doing all this and then it's feeding right into what they need to report, as opposed to being something that's above the obligations that are already that they're already under.
That is a great question. That would be ideal. That it would help them be able to fill in the boxes as necessary on the CAL FIRE application. And that's something I should take a look at. But if anyone is working with those worksheets and would like to spend maybe a little bit of time chatting about that, I'd be really happy to. That would be great.
I think CAL FIRE on their webpage has some information about reporting requirements that you could they have a kind of very detailed guide for new grantees, for example, and the reporting requirements. So you could look into that. They have a lot of good information on their site. I wanted to ask you, Shoana, could you?
Hey, Jim, can we take Mika's question
Yeah,
and then
sorry.
come back to that one?
Sorry.
Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, Mika, go ahead with your question. And you're still muted. There you go.
Awesome. Okay, I'm just want to say that I'm so excited about so much of the things you talked about. Where I am in rural Humboldt County, I work for I came up here thinking I was going to be in the cannabis industry, and I met one of my neighbors and wanted to get involved in protecting the community. I studied sustainable ag at Berkeley, and I thought I'd be like running a chainsaw and like doing firefighting, but he was like, you are good. I do compliance with cannabis. And he was like, you should do my contract negotiations. And I love to say that I learned more about the environmental protection from a conservative logger in Humboldt than in college at Berkeley. And that all being said, I've just seen him as a small business trying to survive. It's impossible. And I got this NCRP funding to do this feasibility study for the entity type. That's what I'm supposed to specifically be focusing on. I just went to this cooperative conference, and what is so exciting, and I really want to connect with you more after this, is that you worked with multiple forestry cooperatives abroad. And that is very few people, there's a lot of people in the cooperative space, talking and learning about what kind of different entity types worked for those people. And then we are not CAL FIRE grant recipients, and I am of the impression that these activities are going to need to be subsidized for a while. And so creating these systems and getting this information, and as I design what we're going to do, seems extremely helpful, or what could be done. So I just want to say, this is all exciting. I love this. It's really simple. I downloaded the forms and stuff. It's
Great.
You made it sound really simple. and I just feel like what we're dealing with in rural Humboldt County and building a cooperative where there's no resource, there's not enough people, there's not enough of anything, and there's a crap ton of forest that needs to be managed between private and public lands. And there's lots of funding to help develop businesses to utilizing the biomass. And so how do we connect that funding to all the people that want to be doing it? We need to help them organize data in this sort of way. And I'm of the belief that people can't be doing it alone, that the administrative burden is too high for the individual equipment operator or someone or mobile mill owner and the only thing that's really different, which is very significant, is the onerous compliance regulations in Humboldt or in California compared to abroad. But otherwise, these are disenfranchised people in a rural area that need help, that are small business owners that don't value their time, and all of the things you said.
Yeah, no, that's great, Mika. I'd love to connect with you more and see how this can be helpful. And I think this makes me think of so many things. One thing we've thought about often is what are the costs? What do the costs and income look like for formal versus informal? And so if you are complying, how much do your costs go up? And usually your income does not, because no one pays more for formally produced or legally produced products than not. But you can really look at and show policymakers too. And this is something that I really stress when I go in to start working with someone is, okay, we're going to produce these results. What do these results mean for the producer? What are their goals? Like Tom said, is 19% or 5%, or what's important? ask the producer, what are your goals? And then we can compare them and inform the producer of their results to help them make decisions, but also share them with policymakers. Look at the importance of your program. Please don't stop it, right? We talk about maybe these subsidies will go away. You need to be able to cover your costs, but we hope they won't. And we try to use the results to justify these investments in these communities that are doing important work, these small businesses managing forests, producing forest products. But it's really important, again, for them to know what is these producers should know what's the difference if we do things legally versus illegally. So we've looked at different scenarios to help highlight what are the costs of compliance, which is really important for producers. And then for these small businesses, how can they be viable? What are ways that they can be more efficient? What are ways that they could innovate maybe to increase their income? But yeah, I'd love to talk about all of these things with you more and with anyone who's interested in exploring these. But that's exciting, Mika, and I love your energy. Please reach out and we'll
I'll send you an email
connect.
right now.
Okay, great.
Great. Thank you, Mika. Jim, go ahead. You had another question, yeah?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Well, I just think that's helpful for you, Shoana, to think about the size of the enterprise. I think if you look at the CAL FIRE website, they list the grantees. They have a lot. They're really transparent. It's really great. I mean, having worked for a foundation, most foundations I don't find to be as transparent as this CAL FIRE grant fund. In terms of who got the grants, they have lists of who applied, what types of projects, how big they were, and then they published the list of groups that got them. And so that will help you see kind of the different types of enterprises, or sizes. And I think if you speak about small, medium, and large, then because I think this tool will be super easy for large businesses to apply, and medium, maybe that's a more sweet spot where they might not be doing it, and they could just use your tool pretty easily. And but then I think the small businesses that most people seem to want to support the small businesses, but like Mika's finding out, they're the ones that face the biggest hurdles and have the least capacity to kind of collect and analyze data. And so I'm not sure how you package. Anyway, just having different strategies for those different sizes. And we know, I think the highest value will come for the small enterprises, but then kind of how to set that up, how to finance it, your time, your team. You might have some people on your team like Mika's out there helping analyze small businesses in Humboldt County on the ground, but somebody's got to pay her and et cetera. I think thinking about the true cost. So I guess there's not really a question there, but I'm excited because I think for us as the Forest Business Alliance that's supporting applicants and grantees, that we should be clear on who we're aiming at. If it's small, we've got these types of things. If it's medium, we've got those types of tools and supports. And yeah, so this is super helpful.
Go ahead,
Great.
Mika. Thanks, Jim.
So I think this may be relevant, but there's this organization called the Rose Foundation that has their wildland. There's a few funds that offer small technical assistance or not technical assistance. Sorry, they're $5,000 to $15,000 grants for small organizations. Ideally, you're a nonprofit, but they'll set you up with a fiscal sponsor. I have a nonprofit vehicle that I'm working for now, but I mean, I don't know how people pay for your services. Generally, I imagine they're not venture capitalists. There's not big bucks. I imagine most of your services are paid for via grants already. But
yeah, that's a great question. Most of my clients for the Green Value Tool right now it's been mostly the U.S. Forest Service Office of International Programs. So they have country offices in each country, and those offices get their funds from USAID usually. And so that's who's paying me for my time. I have had some other small grants from foundations or NGOs paying me directly, but I'm definitely interested in exploring the idea of getting small grants to do capacity building. I am a business. I don't have nonprofit status. I'm working on changing .org to .net on my website, but
But
it's actually
people-
way more complicated than I thought. Anyway,
People
that's
that
an
would
aside.
want your services, for example, could be led to the Rose Foundation, which they do these quarterly. They have a few different ones, and they're a fund that gets money through court settlements that have restitution, environmental restitution as a part of them. And so it's a pretty sustainable thing. And so you could have some, packet, they want distinct deliverables. So if you had some package that then could be clearly described to them as a deliverable, then that could be an avenue that a small business, and I'm pretty sure they can align the business with a nonprofit, can access your skills.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I usually sell kind of a package of like a training, some follow-up activities, and a report, and maybe like a case study or a policy brief that comes out of it too. So being able to not only provide results to those enterprises that we work with, but also by the end of the workshop, usually we have those, but then also have a report for the funder and other materials we can share, like a case study or policy brief. Okay, yeah, I'll look into that. And if anybody has any other ideas, with Allison a couple of years ago, we applied with the Compton Community Partnership. Is that the name of it, Allison? CCP.
Yeah, Kent Village Community Partnership.
Yeah. So trying to get funding to train businesses that were going to be co-located with a biomass facility. And so that unfortunately was not funded, but if people have ideas for applications like that for funders, around a certain geography or kind of mother enterprise and baby enterprises, I'm happy to work on proposals too.
How much does the package cost, if you don't mind me asking? Like, is that within the Rose Foundation, the $5,000 to $15,000 range?
We usually, when I'm charging the government, we usually charge around $10,000 for a 3-day workshop. But that includes usually travel time and preparation time, workshop, 3-day workshop in person, and then report at the end. So it would depend on, I can adjust those rates to make things happen if necessary, especially to get started. But that's for me. I usually have a co-facilitator, which charges less, but I don't have one who speaks English yet. So that would be part of the goal of the workshop, would be getting someone groomed to become a co-facilitator in English. So it would need to cover, well, I guess for the workshop, it'd be just me, but we usually limit it to about 15 to 18 people max, because we have them then split into 3 groups, and they're usually analyzing 3 real cases. And so that allows us to work in groups on those cases, but then also come back for plenary time so that everyone can see how each group is advancing, or each case is advancing as we analyze them during the workshop. And then at the end, we have presentations of all 3 cases. So they're pretty intense, 3 days. Or we have also a 6-week virtual option where we meet once a week for 2 hours over 6 weeks. And then participants work, do individual work, watching presentations, and then also do group work with folks that they're assigned to groups with to analyze a case in advance each week. And the costs turn out to be almost about the same to do it that way too.
Awesome. I'm going to reach out to you.
Okay, great. Look forward to that.
Does anyone else have any other questions? It's been a really great discussion, and thank you for all the follow-up thoughts that everyone's generating.
Where is your email? Is it?
I think it's on the first page. Let's see. Yeah, Shoana, SHOANA .h@gmail.com. I mean, one thing that I've gotten excited about when I've gone to meetings or like collaboratives on the West Coast is this idea of small biomass businesses, like figuring out how we can make it viable and hopefully profitable for people to get small, diameter trees out of the forest. And so looking at like firewood models or cogen or any business ideas and trying to find like what is the scale at which this could work or what kind of support our initial investments with these businesses need to be able to be viable. Those kinds of things are really inspiring to me to try to find solutions to these really important questions of how can we make this happen. So
Yeah.
anyone has any ideas?
Sure, we've talked before, but I'm really into the biomass piece. So happy to talk more after this too, to
Okay,
brainstorm that and kind of keep working on figuring it out.
great. Okay.
Yeah, we hear little things like, oh, so and so wants to do some firewood, maybe, but they really don't even know how to start. So maybe we just throw a model together and say, hey, these would that even make sense or not right now? Right.
Mhm.
So
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. And yeah, if we find some that work, I'd love to publish, get information out there. Like, this is a case that actually worked. Let's look at,
Mhm.
how that was.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Just one last opportunity. Okay, everyone seems complete. Shoana, do you have anything you'd like to add before we conclude?
The other thing that's been really exciting to me, and I was really trying to invest in this before COVID, and then of course everything slowed down, and then I had a baby, so I wasn't traveling as much. But these collaboratives that are popping up all over the West, if there's any, if you guys have any connections with some where you think there might be businesses that might be interested in this tool, or even looking for ways to make the collaboratives themselves financially viable, I'm happy to, as Allison did for me with Carrie, if you make contacts with folks, I'm happy to reach out to people and share ideas. I just find the collaborative so inspiring and the work that they're doing. I'd love to support them any way I can. So yeah, and students, if you know of any students that are interested in using this tool, we've had several that I know of and others that I find later have used the tool. So I'm happy to, as an academic at heart, to connect with folks who are interested in using it for research. So
Yeah, great. And so we'll be sending out this recording to the whole Peer Learning Network too, so people hear those ideas and your suggestions and asks as well for that. So, and I'm glad that you have a contact page here so that people can reach out to you directly for that. So great. Thanks for naming those. Yeah. And I know, Lindsay, you joined late. Are you in a place you could introduce yourself and just say hi, just so we can hear from you before we conclude? Just since you missed the introduction round.
Yeah, I'm so sorry for being late to the call and I missed that.
No problem.
We'll definitely watch the recording afterwards, but I'm Lindsay Nita. I'm with the Captain Bill Community Partnership. We are building a small bioenergy facility in between the Tahoe National Forest and the Lewis National Forest in California, and started a partnership with a sawmill to be co-located. So this would be very valuable, and looking forward to learn more about the tool. We are connected to the North Yuba Forest Partnership, which is a large-scale landscape restoration collaborative. And Allison works, me and Allison work together, and does a lot of great work in the same area. So you might have heard of it, but definitely look forward to connecting with you after the call. Again, sorry for being late, just traveling, but glad I could join for a little bit.
Yeah,
That's great,
great.
Lindsay.
Get that. Thank you,
Thank
Lindsay.
you. I did, Kathleen. I didn't mention, we were talking about it before the recording started, but I have part of my my home, I guess, outside the Bay Area is in Gray Eagle. And so I am very also passionate about what's happening around this area. So if anyone wants to reach out, I'm happy to connect with anyone, especially in between Berkeley and Gray Eagle, the whole area. So please let me know. And yeah, Lindsay, I'm very interested. I pass Comptonville all the time when I go the back way home through Downeyville and then around over to Marysville. So I'd love to stop in sometime and say hi and see what you guys are doing. And yeah, hopefully we can get something going. So thanks.
That's great.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Shoana, for your time and this presentation. And thanks for everyone in your participation and the great conversation and discussion after. And we'll get this posted shortly so the rest of the Peer Learning Network folks can watch. And we'll look forward to seeing how things unfold with this tool and any potential collaboration. So thank you everyone for being here. We'll look forward to seeing you in July, and then we'll be taking a break in August. So enjoy your time, and we'll send more information out soon.
Thank you again so much for this opportunity. Maybe a